Welcome to 31 Nights of Halloween. All October long, we'll be going over nothing but Halloween topics, from true crime, scary stories, and the true stories behind our favorite movies. Now, like I said before, Halloween is one of my favorite times of the year, and my favorite thing to do is watch movies. I love me some scary movies. I'm also a child at heart, and I love watching kids' animated movies too. Let me know down in the comments what your favorite Halloween movie is, or what movie you absolutely have to watch every Halloween. But before we get into today's topic, make sure you help your girl out and subscribe to my channel and hit that notification bell for more content. Okay, now that we got that out the way, let's go ahead and get into today's video. So, today's video, we are going to be going over a few of our favorite Disney princess movies and the dark history behind them. Now, some of these stories are just horror stories from back in the day, and some are actually based on true stories. Now, our first Disney princess, Pocahontas, is actually the only Disney princess who is based on a real person rather than a mythical figure. Now, I'm sure we all remember the Disney version of Pocahontas, but let's talk about what really happened. Now, for starters, Pocahontas' real name is Amamute, and Pocahontas was a name that the white people had given her, and a lot of Native Americans found this very offensive. Also, Emma Mute was very young. She was only about 10 years old, unlike the movie where she was an adult. And also, her and John Smith were never romantically involved, but they did know each other. John was actually in his late 20s to early 30s at this time. Now, in the movie, John Smith was this gentle man who wanted to learn about the culture and help out the tribe. But in actuality, he was pretty much a jerk, and he was described as being militant and was feared by the native people because he was known for putting guns to their heads, demanding food and supplies for his people. You know, the English colonists, yeah, those people. The colonists were stealing from the Native Americans, and they essayed the women and destroyed their homes. So it was pretty bad. And like I said, John Smith was no good guy. At 14 years old, Emma Mute would get married and have a son. Not long after, she would get kidnapped by the English colonists who would force her onto a boat that was going to England. So basically, they trafficked her. These people would her, they would put her down, and they even began to brainwash her to keep her compliant. They were also using her to show the people of England that everything was good between them and the indigenous people because the people of England were starting to get upset and not agree to what was going on with these indigenous people and their land. But the colonists would use Emamute as a symbol of peace to make the people of England believe things were okay, even though they really weren't. Now, Emamute was supposed to be sent back to her village. But she mysteriously passed away on the ship that was supposed to be taking her back home. And she was only 20 years old at this time. So that's the sad truth behind the movie Pocahontas. Now, this next Disney princess is one of my favorites. She was one bad mama jamma. She was the definition of girl power and that women can do anything that men can do. Yes, that's right. I'm talking about Mulan. Now, Mulan's story is centuries old. Like, her story was told before there were books or even paper and pencil. It actually started off as a song that people would sing to pass the time. It's speculated that this story was true, but no one really knows. Now, for the most part, the movie is spot on, except for a few things. So, for starters, there wasn't a dragon or a cricket. Disney just added them to make it cute. Or maybe there was a deeper meaning behind them, like maybe they were her conscience speaking to her, or something on those lines. Who really knows? Also, Milan was actually at war for 12 years before she was honored. She also didn't tell anyone that she was a woman. In the movie, she went back home. Her father was so happy and honored, but in the real story, he had passed away and her mother had remarried. And once she got home, she would end up going into her house and changing her clothes, doing her hair, doing her makeup, and she would end up coming back outside. And at this time, she didn't realize that the soldiers were still there. That's when they realized that she was a woman that whole entire time. Now, don't ask me how they didn't realize after 12 years that she was a woman. Like, how did she even have her period? Like, how did that work? I'm not sure. But, anyways, they then told the king, who ordered Milan to become his slave. But she refused. She would not be loyal to no man but her father. That's when she went to her father's grave and took her own life. Super sad, right? Now, the next two Disney princesses I'm going to be talking about are from fairy tales that are actually pretty disturbing. This next princess is probably one of the most popular ones out there and has been remade so many different times with all kinds of different scenarios. Yep, we're talking about none other than Cinderella. Now, in the Brothers Grimm version of the story, Cinderella still gets her happily ever after, but as for her evil stepsisters, well, they get quite a gorier ending. Now, I know we all remember that the sisters try to make the glass slipper fit their feet. Well, in the original story, one sister cuts off her toes to try to make the slipper fit, and the other sister cuts off the back of her foot to try to get the slipper to fit, which is insane. The prince still finds Cinderella though, and they fall in love and they get married. This is when they have Cinderella's animal friends pluck out her stepsister's eyes for their post wedding entertainment. Pretty crazy, right? Sounds like quite the wedding. Now, you think it couldn't get much worse than that, right? Well, this next princess story is even worse, in my opinion. Sleeping Beauty. Now, Sleeping Beauty wasn't really one of my favorite Disney princess movies, but me and my daughter really did like the Maleficent movies. They were actually really good. She even dressed up as Maleficent one year for Halloween. But, anyways, enough about me. So, there's a few different versions to this story, and we're going to go over one of the first versions to be known. The original tale was called Sun, Moon, and Talia. Now, this tale is really disturbing, to be honest, so this is just a forewarning. Now, Talia was born into royalty, and before the mother gave birth, a woman had a premonition of her getting a splinter and passing away. So the king locked the castle down and kept her away from everything, but she still found a way to get a splinter in her finger and fell down and was unconscious immediately. So far, it's pretty much hand in hand with the movie, right? Well, this is where things start to get disturbing. Well, the king thinks she is unalive, so he abandons the castle and the whole kingdom, leaving her inside. Now, 100 years later, another king is coming through the kingdom when he sees an empty castle. And he's like, wow, look at this big empty castle. And he decides to go check it out. And this is when he finds Talia is still laying there. Now, she still looks the same. She hadn't aged. And this is when he finds Talia still laying there. Now, she still looks the same. She hadn't aged any. So he decides to R her. Now, he thinks she's unalived, which is disgusting. But, anyways, he leaves after, and I guess he impregnates her with twins. So she pretty much goes through the whole pregnancy and gives birth while she's still unconscious. Now, I'm not sure how that would work, but, anyways, these babies are hungry. So they are looking to feed when one finds her finger and starts sucking on it. This is when the baby eventually sucks out the splinter, which awakens Talia. She then names the babies Sun and Moon. Now, the nasty king, he comes back planning to do, the do with her and her unalived body again. And this is when he finds Talia alive and their two kids. Now, get this. Of course, the king is married and has a wife, right? Well, the queen finds out and comes up with this plan to unalive the babies. So she tells her cook to take the babies when Talia isn't around and then to cook them up and feed them to the king and Talia. But the cook refuses. He just couldn't do that to these innocent little babies. So she's like, well, if you can't do it, I'll just do it myself. And this is when the king finds out and tries to stop her, and he ends up pushing the queen into the boiling hot cauldron, which unalives her. He then marries Talia and they live happily ever after. So I guess the story still had a happy ending, right? I don't even know what the moral of this story is meant to be, honestly. Now, I just went over a few Disney princesses today, but almost every Disney princess comes from a dark past. And it's crazy to think that our childhood princesses that we idolized came from such awful and gruesome stories. Disney really did put their magic touch on these awful stories to make them magical. Every Disney story taught us a lesson and showed us love and had magical animals. It's crazy to see how these stories have evolved over the years and continue to evolve. Thank you guys so much for watching the dark history behind Disney princesses. And make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell for part 2, which will be dropping in a few days. And I hope you guys enjoy 31 Nights of Halloween. And I'll see you guys next time.